Nathan loved to wander the forest just like every year. On this first day of spring in 2024, he decided to take a walk. The silence of nature calmed him, and the dense trees made him feel isolated from the chaotic world. That day, he ventured deeper than usual into a part of the forest where the paths were not clearly marked. The sky slowly darkened as the sun set behind the treetops. As he walked, he noticed a strange change in the air. The wind had calmed and the birds had stopped singing. He felt the weight of something invisible, as if the forest was watching him. He tried to ignore the discomfort and kept going, but then he saw something that shouldn't have been there. Ahead of him, between the trees, stood a figure. Tall, too thin. It couldn't be human. Nathan jerked back and blinked. The figure vanished. He shuddered and quickened his pace. But the further he walked, the more unrecognizable the paths became. The trees all looked the same, as though they were moving in a circle. He couldn't find a way out. He pulled out his phone, but the screen was black. No signal, no battery, nothing. His breathing quickened. He heard a whisper behind him. He couldn't make out the words, but they weren't from a person. They were irregular, distorted, as if the space itself was making noises. He turned quickly, but there was nothing. Panicking, he ran. Twigs snapped under his feet. Shadows stretched out before him in shapes that didn't make sense. And then, silence, heavy and suffocating. Nathan stopped, trying to compose himself. And then he saw it. Just a few meters ahead, in the darkness between the trees, the figure reappeared. Tall, faceless, with arms longer than they should have been. Motionless, but terrifyingly present. He tried to scream, but no sound came from his throat. He couldn't remember how he escaped. He only knew that the next morning, he was found at the edge of the forest, with scratches on his arms and his clothes covered in mud. He didn't know how much time had passed. He didn't know what he had seen, but he knew one thing. He would never step foot in that forest again. That night, unable to sleep, Nathan sat down at his computer and began searching the internet. He looked for any trace of the creature he had seen. After hours of searching, he came across stories, legends, and testimonies from others. They all described the same figure, and they all said one thing: once you see it, it never forgets you. One of the most well-known cases in the U.S. occurred in May 2014 in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser, brutally attacked their peer, Peyton Leutner, saying they did it to prove their loyalty to Slenderman and become part of his military world. That's when his mind clenched, tightening, and he soon came to a conclusion. The creature he had seen wasn't just an entity, it was an existence that knows you, that follows you through time. For a while he tried to calm himself, to maintain his normality, but everywhere he looked, he saw shadows. On every corner, even in his own home. The more he read the internet stories, the more he realized that Slenderman harms only children, while leaving an indelible scar on adults for life. The next day, while walking through a nearby park, he saw a shadow, long and motionless, standing under a tree. Before he could react, the shadow vanished. He realized that this was only the beginning of something much deeper, much scarier, something that, even today, a year later, hasn't let go of him. And that's why I, Nathan, decided to tell you this story. I no longer visit that forest. I moved far away. Although I left the forest behind, I carried the memories and dreams with me. I will never forget that. If anyone was part of this case, please reach out to me. We will get through this together.